The starless night, when God fell silent and Noah's family faced the end of the world on a floating darkness. The air itself felt heavy, thick with an unspoken dread that had settled over the land for generations. For 100 years Noah, a man whose righteousness shone like a solitary lamp in a world consumed by shadows, had toiled. Not merely with wood and tools, but with an unwavering conviction that defied all reason, all mockery, all common sense. He built an ark, a colossal vessel that dwarfed the imagination, an edifice of gopher wood and pitch, rising against a sky that had never known rain. Imagine the whispers, the snickers, the outright ridicule that followed him from the bustling marketplaces to the quiet corners of his own village. A flood? From where? The sun shines every day. Yet, Noah persisted, driven by a divine whisper that had pierced the cacophony of human depravity. God had commanded Noah to build an ark, specifying its dimensions and the materials to be used. The world outside the ark's massive, unyielding walls was a tapestry of moral decay. Violence was rampant, imaginations were consumed by evil, and the very fabric of human society was unraveling into a chaotic mess. God, in a profound and heart-wrenching lament, looked upon his creation and regretted making humanity. It wasn't an act of petulance, but a profound sorrow, a divine grief over the choices of his beloved creation. Noah, however, found grace in the eyes of the Lord. This grace wasn't a reward for perfection, but a recognition of a heart that still sought to walk with God in a world that had abandoned its maker. His faith wasn't a shield against scorn. It was the very engine that propelled him forward, plank by plank, nail by nail. Then came the day. The invitation, both terrifying and redemptive, echoed through the vast chambers of the unfinished ark. "Come into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation." The moment arrived, not with a trumpet blast, but with a quiet, undeniable movement. Pairs of every living creature, from the towering giraffes to the crawling insects, began to converge. It was an astonishing, almost surreal procession, guided by an unseen hand. Lions lay beside lambs, bears walked with birds, all stripped of their natural animosity, united by an imperative they could not comprehend, yet instinctively obeyed. The air crackled with anticipation, a strange mix of divine order and impending doom. For 7 days, Noah and his family, along with the incredible menagerie, were sealed within the ark. Imagine the quiet, the waiting. What must have filled their thoughts during those agonizing days? Doubt? Hope? The heavy weight of responsibility? How often do we too find ourselves waiting in a quiet space, certain of a coming change, yet uncertain of its exact timing or the full extent of its impact? Will our faith hold firm when the signs are not yet clear, and the world outside remains stubbornly unchanged? Then, the first drop fell. A single drop, followed by another and another, until the sky opened with a fury never witnessed before. The floodgates of the heavens were broken open, and the fountains of the great deep burst forth. The very foundations of the earth seemed to crack. The mocking laughter from outside turned to screams, then to silence, as the waters rose, relentlessly, consuming everything. The starless night had truly begun. The starless night, when God fell silent and Noah's family faced the end of the world on a floating darkness inside the ark, a world apart from the deluge raging outside. A new reality began to unfold. The rhythmic creaking of the colossal vessel, the constant sloshing of water against its sturdy hull, became the new heartbeat of existence. Imagine the sensory overload, the myriad animal sounds, the distinctive odors of 1,000 species confined, yet surprisingly peaceful. Noah, his wife, his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives, were not just caretakers. They were the last vestiges of humanity, bearing the weight of a shattered world and the hope of a new one. Their days were a relentless cycle of feeding, cleaning, and managing the vast, improbable ecosystem they now inhabited. Every single task, no matter how mundane, was imbued with immense significance, for the survival of life itself rested on their diligent hands. Outside, The waters rose with an apocalyptic intensity. The tallest mountains vanished beneath the churning expanse, the very geography of the earth being reshaped by the relentless flood. For 40 days and 40 nights, the heavens wept and the deep poured forth. And then, a silence. Not the serene silence of peace, but the heavy, suffocating silence of a world utterly erased. The rain ceased, but the waters remained, covering everything for 150 days. During this time, the ark was a solitary speck on an endless, featureless ocean, a fragile bubble of life adrift in a watery tomb. The human mind struggles to grasp such desolation, such profound solitude. God, who had spoken so clearly to Noah, now seemed utterly, terrifyingly silent. How terrifying must that silence have been? In our own lives, when the storm rages or when it passes and leaves behind only a vast emptiness, do we sometimes mistake God's quiet for his absence? Is it possible that even in the profoundest silence, a divine purpose is unfolding? A new beginning being prepared, though we cannot yet perceive it? For Noah and his family, there were no horizons, no landmarks, only the boundless gray expanse of water and sky. There was no news from the outside world, no comfort from familiar faces. Their faith, once tested by the ridicule of their peers, was now tested by an even greater adversary, the crushing weight of isolation and the profound mystery of God as seemingly withdrawn presence. Yet, within the confines of that floating world, a fragile routine formed, a testament to human resilience and divine provision. They knew, deep in their hearts, that they were not forgotten, even if the signs of hope were few and far between. The pitch that sealed the ark, the gopher wood that held strong against unimaginable pressures, these were constant reminders of a promise made and a purpose being fulfilled. They were survivors, not just of a physical flood, but of a spiritual deluge, chosen to carry the flame of life and faith into an unknown future. The Starless Night, when God fell silent and Noah's family faced the end of the world on a floating darkness. After 150 days of the waters prevailing, a subtle shift began. God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark. It was a remembering that wasn't about a lapse in divine memory, but an active turning of divine attention, a signal for a new phase of restoration. A wind swept over the earth, and the waters began to recede, slowly at first, then with increasing certainty. Imagine the quiet joy, the tentative hope, as the ark finally came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. It wasn't an immediate landing on dry land, but a gentle grounding on a peak still partially submerged, a first solid contact after months of ceaseless motion. Still, the waiting continued. For 40 more days, Noah sent out a raven, which flew back and forth until the waters had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove. The first dove found no place to set its foot and returned to the ark. 7 days later, he sent it out again, and this time it returned in the evening with a freshly plucked olive leaf in its beak, a vibrant green symbol of life reclaiming the drowned world. How often do we, in our own seasons of waiting, search for a sign, a small indication that the storm is truly over and that new life is indeed possible? Do we have the patience of Noah, sending out our hopes, even when they return empty-handed, trusting that eventually a leaf of promise will appear? This tiny leaf, carried by a humble bird, was a message of profound significance. The earth was emerging, life was stirring, and God's promise was unfolding. 7 days later, Noah sent the dove out a third time, and it did not return to him, signaling that the land was finally dry. The immense doors of the ark, once sealed by divine command, were now opened. Imagine the silence of that first step onto firm ground, the sensation of solid earth beneath their feet after so long. The animals, one by one, poured out, their instincts once again guiding them to the expanse of a renewed world. Noah's first act upon leaving the ark was not to build a home, but an altar. He offered burnt offerings to the Lord, an act of profound gratitude and worship, acknowledging the one who had preserved them. It was a moment of deep spiritual significance, consecrating the new beginning with an act of devotion. And then the rainbow. A breathtaking arch of vibrant colors spanning the sky, a visible covenant, a divine promise that never again would all life be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again would there be a flood to destroy the earth. This wasn't just a sign of God's power, but of his enduring love, his commitment to his creation, and his faithfulness to his word. The starless night had ended, replaced by the brilliant spectrum of God's grace. The story of Noah and the ark reminds us that even when God's presence feels distant, even when the world is consumed by chaos and darkness, his purpose remains steadfast. The faith true isn't absence of pain, it's trusting even without understanding, knowing that after the storm there is always a covenant of hope waiting to be revealed.